Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Obed Ventura, and I'm a Senior Partner Success Specialist at Action Network. That means I help out on support, answering any questions you may have, and I also do weekly demos and trainings like this to make sure that folks can make the best use of the tool. Welcome to the 103 training on emails. This is the third in a series of Getting Started trainings. And we have a 101 that covers data, 102 that covers actions, and then next week we'll have a 104 that covers mobile messaging. And all of these trainings stack up on each other and build up on each other. So if you've missed the previous two, reach out to support and we can send you some recordings, but we also do these every month, so you can just join next month. And for the purposes of the training, I'm going to ask that folks stay muted just so there's not as much background noise. When you do have questions, please drop those in the chat and I'll answer those for you as we go along. So let's go over how this training will go. The goal for today is to learn how to create engaging emails that are delivered to our targeted audience. So we'll go through some example emails. We'll discuss a bit about how to prepare for your email, writing it, targeting, testing, all that good stuff. And then we'll go over how you can manage them. And I'll talk a bit about deliverability before we wrap up. And of course, at the end, we'll have time for any lingering questions that you have. So before we begin, I do want to cover some key vocabulary definitions that are important to be aware of when you're writing an email. So first, we have something called the email header. Sometimes this is called the email wrapper. And this is normally the logo image at the top center of your email when they load up on your email reader. Next, we have the footer, and this is at the very bottom of the email, and this is the part that has an unsubscribe link. Next, we have clips. Clips allow you to insert personalized information based off the data you have in Action Network. So you can insert someone's street address, their name, even the value in a custom field. And you can actually use Liquid with clips to add conditional text. So you can say, if someone has this tag, add this paragraph. If they have a different tag, add another paragraph. So it really allows you to hyper-personalize emails. And don't worry, as we use these words in the training, they will make a lot more sense. Next, we have HTML, and this is just email code. It's very basic, and it allows you to customize the emails with buttons, layouts, all that fun stuff. And then finally, we have snippets. Snippets are bits of HTML code that you're going to use very often, and you can easily select and insert them into an email that you'll be writing. Now on Action Network, there are two ways to write an email. The first is the visual/HTML editor, and this is the one we're going to be focusing on for today. This one uses an email wrapper, again, which is just the header. It's your logo at the top of the email. And with the visual editor, you can completely code the HTML yourself. We do also offer the drag and drop. And with this one, you cannot edit HTML, but you can do fancier stuff without knowing how to code. And with these, you would create an email layout. Now, the drag and drop is a really great option if you don't know how to code but want to create cool looking emails. It's also super useful for creating newsletters. So here we have an example of emails that were written in the different options you have. So here we have the visual/HTML, and on the right side, we have the drag and drop. So you can see that this is, the drag and drop is really great for things like newsletters. But for today, we're going to focus on the visual and HTML editor. So now let's get into some examples of some emails that folks have written. These were all created on Action Network. And so first we have this email from Run for Something. And what you'll see on the notes here are just some things that I want to highlight. First, I do want to note that they are using an auto-generated email wrapper. You can always code it yourself, but if you don't know how to code, we'll walk you through today how you can auto-generate a wrapper. And wrappers are really useful because they help personalize your email and make sure that you have consistent branding across everything going out. Next, you can use clips. Like I mentioned earlier, clips allow you to insert personalized information into an email. And so when we say hi and add the first name clip, the first name of the person who receives this email will appear here. So we have my coworker, Amy, who received this email, and her name was automatically inserted into this email. Next, we have an email from United We Dream. Now, they are also using a wrapper and clips, but here I want to highlight the snippets. Like I mentioned previously, snippets are little bits of HTML that you will create and that you will use consistently. So you can have snippets for HTML code that produces a Facebook or Twitter share button, things like that. Now, one question I do have for the chat, what are things that you should think about before you write an email? So what is your process, I guess, before you write an email? And I'll give folks a minute to drop some responses in the chat. So we got some responses here. Who will this email go to? Definitely. What's the call to action? What's the purpose of the email? Length. I'll talk about length in a bit, but that's one that folks don't think about too often that I wish they would. Identify the audience and purpose, draft, review, and send. Those are all really, really great things to think about. But one thing that I know a lot of folks don't think about is deliverability. So it really doesn't matter what you do before you write an email if it just ends up in spam. We want to avoid spam as much as possible. The purpose of an email that we send out is to end up in an inbox where people will actually see it and read it. And so deliverability is actually really important, and you want to do some steps for deliverability before you've actually moved forward with sending anything out. And the most important thing there to think about is to set up your DKIM records and install SPF records. Now, there is an additional DMARC requirement. Reach out to support, and it will explain what that is. But essentially, what DKIM and SPF do is they define who can send on your behalf, and they verify to mailbox providers that you are who you say you are. This has become this was originally a security requirement, and it essentially, or a security step, it prevented people from spoofing your domain. So, for example, without DKIM, someone could take the actionnetwork.org domain and send a bunch of spam and scammy emails out, and that would damage our brand reputation. So DKIM and SPF were originally created as a security measure to ensure that your emails actually come from you and that other people can't spoof you. Now mailbox providers are using these to help just place you in an inbox or not. They have minimum standards that they want you to meet, and without DKIM or SPF records, your emails are going to go to spam. Not 100% guarantee, but probably going to go to spam. Now, there are some other things to keep in mind as you think about this. You want to think about your content. So, no spammy language. Don't try to catch people with things like giveaways. A lot of times, especially in the political space, we'll see a lot of 700% match for your donation. That can be very, very spammy, and mailbox providers have learned to identify that as risky language. Now, you'll also want to avoid things like shortened links. This means you should never, ever, ever use a tiny URL, a bit.ly, any link shortener. You should not use them in an email. These are excellent for in-person events where people can quickly type in their URL or your shortened URL on their phone. But in an email, this is actually very widely used by scammers and spammers. Mailbox providers don't like them because they can't see where that link ultimately redirects to. And so they've just started flagging anything with a shortened URL as spam. And so you should not use any of those shortened links. Pam, to your question, should you use a button to the link? Yes, you should. You should use buttons, hyperlinks. I'll walk through how you should properly link things. But there are ways in an email to hide all those jumbles of numbers and letters that are in a URL and a nice little either button or, again, hyperlink that will get around those blocks for mailbox providers. And then finally, to a comment that someone dropped in the chat, keep it short. And by short, we mean 102 kilobytes. Messages longer than this tend to be a flag. for mailbox providers, but also people are just less likely to read a giant email. We only recommend those if you absolutely have to send a ton of information out. Usually it's best to send more messages that are shorter. And Bill, there's no way for you to check. Well, actually, there is. We just launched this 2 weeks ago. You can check if you have everything you need installed on your domain by checking out this chatbot that we've created. And let me just pull that up. Okay. There we go. And you have this chatbot here that we've created that should allow you to enter your domain and it will verify if things are added and we'll walk you through how to actually generate records, install them, or validate them. So you can check if your DKIM is valid there. And you will need to reach out to us in order to validate everything, but you'll be able to see just where am I at right now from here. So that's a great resource that we've just added. And Pam, I'm not going to go in a lot more depth on DKIM and SPF here right now, but reach out to support at actionnetwork.org and we can give you links on why it matters and how you can install them on your domain. So now, I've just gone over this a bit. What is deliverability? It's your message arriving in the inbox as intended. And the reason all of this matters is that the definition of spam has changed over time. The old spam used to ask, is this email unrequested? The new definition of spam asks, is this email likely to be engaged with? And for this reason, we need to actually produce engaging emails for people. And there are two key things to keep in mind here as we think about how mailbox providers like Google and Yahoo determine our reputation. Your reputation matters because, again, the new definition of spam is based on, is this email likely to be engaged with? So you need to have people clicking your emails, opening them, replying, spending a lot of time on them. You want people to have positive metrics and you want to reduce negative metrics like things like spam reports. So you do want to make sure you're sending to an audience that is likely to give you a good reputation. And there are a couple of reasons for this. A, you just want to avoid spamming people who don't want emails from you. It's rude. We've all had those senders who send us bad emails. We don't want to continue that behavior. But also, when you send to people who want to engage with you regularly, every now and then you will need to send an email to everyone, no matter how engaged you are. You will need to send to those unengaged people. If you have for months or years been sending to a small audience of very active people who engage with you positively, that gives you a good reputation. So when you do have to send to a huge audience that is less engaged, you're going into that send with a positive reputation and you are less likely to end up in spam. And again, that's the whole point of this. So you do want to do some engagement-based targeting from time to time. Generally, you want to start off emails by sending them to people who have only sent in the last 30 days. And again, when we get into targeting for our email, once we get into the platform, I'll show you what this means. But if your initial send to 30-day actives does great, send it to 60-day actives. If that does great, send it to 90. And then let's say after 90, the numbers aren't really good. I'm not getting good stats. You can stop the send there. And on Action Network, you can use this email engagement field you're seeing on the slide here. The magic number here that email providers really don't want you to go past is 180 days. We have heard this from Gmail, we've heard it from Hotmail, we've heard it from Yahoo, we've heard it from SendGrid, who helps Action Network send your emails. Across the industry, across a bunch of different platforms and companies, mailbox providers really do not like it when you send past 180-day actives. It really is very, very bad for your deliverability and your reputation overall. So you really want to sunset those inactives if they're no longer part of the group. My apologies here. And I'd highly recommend pulling a report to unsubscribe these folks and setting up a reactivation series. Now, just to show you what a reactivation series look like, the purpose of them is to get people active on your list again. You want people to ideally get active again so you don't have to unsubscribe them. So here's an example of what a reactivation series looks like. After 180 days, I check to see if they've engaged with me at all. If they have not, I'll send them an email asking them to take action, encouraging them, having some sort of call to action that they can take. Next, I wait for a week. I check again. Have they engaged with me at all? If they haven't, I'll give them a second chance to. And then after a week, if they still haven't engaged, I just unsubscribe them. A reactivation series is a really great way to just regularly clean your list. And I know that a lot of folks have a lot of pride in how large their list is. However, if that list is not generating the positive reputation you need, if it's not generating the actions or the donations that you need, then it's not that big of a benefit, and you should go ahead and unsubscribe those folks that aren't engaging. It will help you out in the long run, both with mailbox reputation and in learning what your actual group of supporters really like. Now, to some questions that folks have dropped in the chat. What does it mean when an activist is unsubscribed due to a previous complaint? I'll get to that in a bit, and I'll explain a bit more depth later on in this training. But essentially what that means is they are on the global block list and you are not able to email them. Again, I'll go in more depth a bit later on in this training. Now, what qualifies as engagement? That is a great question. I have a whole 105 training that we do about once a quarter, and you can reach out to support and I'll give you more details on what that means, on what engagement means. But to keep it short, engagement means there are positive and negative forms of engagement. The positive forms of engagement are opens, clicks, and replies. The negative forms of engagement are spam reports, low opens, and unsubscribes. Although unsubscribes are not as bad as people think they are. They don't actually hurt your reputation, but obviously you probably don't want people unsubscribing a ton. But those are really the only metrics that we have access to. We know for a fact that Google, AOL, all these other companies do look at actually hundreds or even thousands of metrics, but the only six that they provide are those ones I've just listed. Open rates, click rates, spam complaint rates, bounces, unsubscribes, and you'll be able to see replies. So that's what we mean by engagement. We want to increase those positive metrics of engagement and decrease the negative ones like spam reports and unsubscribes. So now let's take a look at the email that we'll be building today now that we've gone over deliverability and maintaining the health of our program. So this is the email I'll be making. And we have these little arrows here to note everything that we'll be building. So we have this wrapper, we're going to use some clips, we're going to add a button, and we'll add some images and snippets to our email. So now we'll go into Action Network. And the first thing I need to do is create a wrapper. Again, the email wrapper or email header, these are the things that add my own organization's logo to the top of the email like we see here. So we'll go to the details menu at the top and select email wrappers and layouts. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the drag and drop for this training. However, you can create templates for the drag and drop with layouts, and you'll see those layouts here. We also have some pre-built default templates for action-oriented emails, fundraising, and newsletter emails. So that's a really great place if you want to use the drag and drop. Now let's create a new wrapper here. And like I mentioned earlier, you can code this yourself. However, I have no clue how to do that. So I'm going to auto-generate this wrapper. And you'll just need a file with an image of your organization's logo. Now, ideally, this is about 400 pixels in length. And once we're done, we'll click Build Wrapper. You'll see that warning there. We can just click OK. And now my wrapper is made. I'm just going to give this a name. And this is the August training. And then we'll click Save. You can send yourself a test down here if you'd like, but I'm going to test this with my actual email in a bit. So that wrapper has been created. Some things I want to highlight here is that if you are going to use a wrapper all the time, you can make a particular wrapper your default so that it's what always appears when you write an email. So just click those three dots right here, and you'll see the option to make a certain wrapper your default. And if there is already a wrapper that is defaulted, you'll see that little yellow star there. So now that my wrapper is created, let's go ahead and write the email. To write an email, I go to the People's menu and select Emails. Just to show you where to go to the drag and drop, I can change the slider here and come down here. And with the drag and drop, I can select the amount of columns I want, drag what I want to appear there, play around like that. And this is a great way to build the email. Let's move on to the visual/HTML editor. And the first thing I'll do here is add my subject lines. And again, my organization is Day of Democracy. We're fighting to make Election Day a federal holiday. So I have my first subject line, and here is a copy of the email we'll be doing. So this is going to be a generic fundraising email. And after adding my subject line, I'm going to add an additional subject line for A/B testing. A/B testing is a super helpful way of allowing you to see what works to get people to click and take action. So you'll be able to test various subject lines with different language. You can even test different bodies. And this is super useful if you want to test different layouts, different images, different language within the email. So there are a lot of ways to test your emails. When you A/B test, we will automatically divide your sending universe, and people will be randomly sorted into different cohorts. Each cohort will receive one email with a different subject line or body combination, and you'll be able to see what works best and compare stats between the two. And I'll show you what that looks like after we've sent this email out. So let's add our other subject line here. Now below this, I can add the name of my organization, my own name, my executive director's name. This is just the person on your list who people would recognize, or the name of the organization that people would recognize. So I'm going to say this is from Obed with Day of Democracy. And then below this, I can edit my reply tos. So it looks like this, I only have one reply to here listed, but you can add additional reply tos. On Action Network, we only allow you to send from a particular email address if you have verified that you actually own that email address. And we do this to prevent abuse through the platform. In order to add verified email addresses, go to the Settings tab of the Group Manage page. And under Email Settings, I can add an additional verification or verified email address. So this one from Valeria is verified. It's the default one. And you can see that we've added another email address here, but that one has not been verified yet. And you'll be able to resend those verifications or delete them from there. Below this, and actually one more note on the difference between the from line and the reply to. The from line is a specific name. The reply to is the actual email address that sends out this email and that receives any replies. So this is the only line that will contain the @ symbol, whereas the from line cannot contain the @ symbol. You should not put your email address there. In fact, it will throw an error if you try to put an email address there. And so make sure you put the name of your organization or your name in the from line and the actual email address in the reply to. Now below this, we have preview text. And preview text is really great for mobile users, and it can increase your open rates a lot, but it is not actually part of the email. It only appears as a preview when people are sitting and scrolling through their inbox on their phone or on their desktop. So let's add this preview text here. Oh, my apologies. Well, I'll add that preview text here. And then below this, I can select an email wrapper. So I'll select this August 2025 training wrapper that we just created. And then we can go ahead and write our email. Now, here's the body of the email I have. And before I do this, I want to make crystal clear, you should not copy and paste from either Google Docs or a Windows or a Microsoft document into Action Network. It can cause weird spacing issues sometimes, and you should absolutely not copy and paste images. When you do that, it actually doesn't capture or save correctly on the platform. You resize it. Things look really weird when you actually hit send. So for the purposes of this training, I am going to copy and paste, but I did want to make clear that when you are actually writing your email, you should avoid copy and pasting, and you should actually just type it directly here and save and refresh as needed to save your drafts. So here's my email that I've written. And everything that is capitalized here are things that I want to edit or make changes to. So first I have this first name or recipient. And here I'm going to add a clip. So I'll go into this clip section. And I do want to sit here for a minute and just walk through some useful clips that you may want to use. First, we have clips on activist information. So first name, you will probably want to use this clip in every email you send. This is what will add someone's first name to this email. And if we have no first name, it will default to friend or whatever I choose to type right there. Next, in terms of clips, you can insert someone's last name, the street they live in, their city, state, mobile number, all that good stuff. We also have fundraising clips. So you can insert someone's highest previous contribution, the average amount they've donated, the last date that they donated. You can also pre-fill a donation amount in a link. And then we also have different clips for targets in letter campaigns. So you can automatically insert the name of someone's target, their contact info, a call ask. And then we also have other information. So you can do an if-else block, custom field values. You can automatically throw in an unsubscribe link if you want it somewhere else in the email. So there are a ton of different ways you can personalize this email. Coming back here, you can see that there's this amount section here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a test. So you'll notice here I have a donation button, but I also have a section where people can click on a link. So what I'm doing here is I'm comparing between the two, this URL versus this button, which is going to work best to generate donations. So first for this amount, let's add in a clip. And I'm going to add this highest previous contribution clip. And what this does is when everyone reads this email in their inbox, they will see a different number here depending on the highest previous contribution they've given. If they have never given before, it will default to $5 or $10, whatever I choose to put here. Now with Liquid, you can also do cool things like multiplication, division. So I'm going to say times 2. And when I hit send on this email, it will take the highest previous contribution. Let's say this was $5. It will multiply it by 2. So the number that people actually see here will be 10. And the purpose of that is to try to increase the amount that they've donated over time. And you can do the same thing with all of the clips that I've listed out here. And you can also use Liquid just more generally if you know how to use it to write your own clips. So I have that there. The next thing I'm going to do is link to my action. And to do that, I have my fundraiser listed right here. And this is very, very important when writing an email. Anytime you share a link to anything in an email, make sure you're copying the direct link. Do not copy a link that you have previously received in your own inbox. If you do that, what actually happens is Action Network adds a unique ID to the end of every URL. And so the URL you get in your inbox is different than the one that I get in my inbox. And these user IDs are used to track things like actions and clicks. So if I were to copy a link that I received in my inbox and share it with all of you, everyone who clicks the link will be interpreted as me because they're all clicking the link with my user ID. This leads to people signing as you, the name in your profile changes, data gets jumbled and lost. And so to avoid all of that, make sure you're copying the direct link from this box and make sure that any other link for any platform that's not Action Network does not have any user ID on it. And a user ID will look something like scan, user ID, and then a whole bunch of random numbers and letters. And so if you see this, actually, it's like that. If you see can user ID in a URL, it means a user ID is attached, and you should just delete everything that comes after that. So I have this URL here. Let's link it to my action or to my email. And I'm actually going to bold this. And we are good to go. My apologies here. This is what I meant when I said copy and pasting can cause weird spacing issues. So let's just leave this as is. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a donation button. Now, again, if you're like me and you have no clue how to code, we do have some resources to help you. So you can insert a button right there. And we'll paste the URL. I can have the text that appears on the button. I can change the color. And let's go with something more red. That looks good. I can change my text color, play around with the width, font size, and then just click insert. And oh, there we are. Now I have a donate link created right there. I can go ahead and edit this. And I can edit the text, click save, and that appears there. Now there are two ways, moving further down here, there are two ways to add social buttons. Up here, we have social links specifically created. So I can choose my organization's Facebook page. And here I just have the Action Network's Facebook page. I can link to that there, change how it's aligned. I can also add additional social media if I need them. And now I have my Facebook button there. And now anytime people click on this little icon, they will be taken to my Facebook page. There is another way to do it. It's a bit more cumbersome, but I do want to walk through it because it will allow me to talk about how to add images. So let's just delete this. There we are. Let's add an image now. So another way to add a social button is to actually just link to an image. So let's do that here. You'll notice we have this photo icon right there. Let's click on it. And I've actually already previously uploaded this, but I will go through and add it again. Any image you've previously uploaded will automatically appear as part of this image library. And you can also add images via URL, but let's go ahead and upload this. And I'll add my Facebook logo. And now it's there. And this is the proper way you should add an image. Again, that process is clicking that image icon and clicking upload to add your image. Any image you've uploaded in the past will appear in this library, so you can quickly add it in the future. Now let's go ahead and edit this image because this is supposed to be a nice icon. I can add some alt text, and this is super helpful for accessibility. So people who can't see can use their screen reader, and you can add a text description of the image. Next, you can also link this image to another website. So let's put my Facebook page there. Now for my position, I want this centered. And for the width, again, this is supposed to be a small little icon, just a social media share button. I'll make this 50 pixels. So now there we are. When people click on this little image here, they will be taken to my Facebook page. Now there's one more thing I want to add, and that is the snippet. And again, snippets are little bits of HTML code that you've previously saved that you want to use regularly in email. So I'm going to add that footer right there. And I think we're ready to go here. I have my first name, I have my clips, and my buttons. So I think we're ready to go. So before moving on to targeting, you should always, always, always save and send yourself a test. You want to make sure that this email looks good across different email readers. So make sure that it looks good on the Mail app, on Gmail, on Outlook. And actually, one note on that, if your group, if you know that your list uses Outlook a lot, there's a lot of people that use Outlook to read their emails, you'll really want to make sure to test these in Outlook. Outlook handles email code differently than every other email provider. And so that can lead to some weird handling of images. And so to get around that, make sure that you are testing in Outlook if you know a lot of people on your list use it. So I've just sent myself a test, and I'm going to pause my screen sharing here and just open this test that I've just received, and I'll show you what that email looks like now. So now I have this screen here. So here is the test that I have just received. So it looks like there is some weird spacing issue with this button. I'll go ahead and fix that in just a second. But I have my logo front and center. I have my subject line, and you'll notice this test here. This indicates that this email is just a test, and my clip is working properly. I think the previous amount I've donated is $1. When I multiply it by 2, only $1 appears here, so that's working. And my social media share button is right there. And this looks great to me. I am just going to tweak that little part there. So I'm going to pause this sharing and go back to Action Network. Let's play with this. All right, that should be good. And then we'll move on to targeting. And again, the reason you want to send a test is you want to make sure that things like images, links, buttons, everything loads properly. I'd also recommend opening the email on different devices. So open it on a phone, on a desktop, on a tablet. Make sure that it looks good across different screen sizes. So now let's get into targeting. And if you joined me for our 101 training, this page should look familiar. The targeting for emails, reports, and mobile messaging is all identical. And so first, I want to highlight email engagement. And I want to talk about deliverability again. Like I mentioned, 180 days is the magic number. You should not be emailing people who have not engaged in the last 180 days. And this email engagement tool is a great way to capture people who have engaged with you in a certain way. Next, I have this predictive open score. Not all groups will be able to use this. You have to opt into the data co-op. But what this does is it uses machine learning to gather a bunch of anonymized data from people who have shared it in this data co-op. And we will be able to generate an audience that is likely to open this email. This is a really great way if you are having deliverability issues so that you can safely expand your audience to people who are likely to engage with you in some sort of way. And it's also a great way to just grow your reach more generally. Um, Now, some other things you can do are targeting based off of action activity, whether someone has opened in the past. Oh, my apologies. Oh, there. Um, Thank you for pointing that out, Ben. My apologies. So what we're looking at now is the targeting page. So this email engagement field is what I was just talking about. Um, so you can see that 180 days there. That's the magic number you don't want to go past. Here's where you can do that email predictive open score. And like I said, you can do email action activity. Did people receive certain emails? When did they last subscribe? Things like that. You can target by tag, sources, and fields. So I am going to target this to my volunteers. You can also target by field values. So you can capture people who entered F in the gender field, for example, or who have um, a, any value in the member number field. So this is how you can target custom field data. Below this, you can target by actions, uploads, and fundraising. And if you're using the ActBlue integration, all of those donors will be included here. You can target by past emails you've sent, people who opened or clicked on certain emails, and likewise for mobile messaging. And then we have some geographic-based targeting, so state, county, legislative district, language, all that good stuff. And then finally, we have queries. Queries allow you to do a lot more complex targeting. If you look at this column on the side here, you can see my include and excludes. Notice that this has an and function. This means only people who have engaged in 180 days and have my volunteer tag will be included in this email. Queries allow you to do more complex OR operations. So here's an example of an actives query. This captures people who have taken at least one action or opened an email or clicked or subscribed in the last 120 days. So you can also add additional rules here. You can nest them. And so you can have a whole bunch of combinations of and ors. And this is just a really great way to fine tune your audience and get very specific segments with your list. Coming back to Action Network here, you can set a random limit. Random limits are super useful if your list is greater than 10,000 people. And this is super helpful for A/B testing. Again, you want to make sure that the things that are going out to everyone else on your list is actually a good email. So let's add a random limit here. Typically, the random limit should probably be around 1,000. For today, I'm just going to put 2 to make sure this only goes out to 2 people. But when you are doing this for yourself, I'd recommend a test audience of about 1,000 to get helpful stats. Next, we will click Save, Preview, and Send, and this will preview the email before it goes out. And it'll calculate the number of people it's going out to. One thing to highlight is a new feature called automated A/B testing. And so this allows you to, instead of having to sit here and monitor hour after hour, which one's doing good and manually choosing a winner, you can automatically choose a winner. So you can look for a key stat that you want to measure this by. So maybe it's donation rate or click rate. Let's do open rate for today. And after 3 hours, I want to send the email that performed best to everyone else on my list. So we will, after 3 hours, look at those 2 different subject lines, compare stats between the 2, and the email with the higher open rate will be selected as the winner automatically, and that will go out to everyone else on the list. Now, every now and then, you're just going to write a bad email. It doesn't matter what subject line you use, everything goes badly. And if that happens, you don't want that to go out to anyone else. So in that case, you'll want to set a circuit breaker. So if my open rate is below something like 20%, I probably don't want this going out to the rest of my list. So I can add that circuit breaker there. And what that means is that after 3 hours, if both tests have open rates below 20%, then it's over. We're not going to send this out to anyone else, neither test one, and you're all done there. So I'm going to set that up right there. And you can schedule this for any point in the future. And an important thing to note when you schedule emails, you'll notice, it looks like it's going to no one on my list, which is fine for today. But you'll notice that it does have a set number right here. If you do not refresh before targeting, then only the current audience will receive this. So let's say, let's schedule this out for next week. So I have this scheduled out for next week. This will go out to 0 activists on my list. But let's say between now and next week, I upload 10,000 people to my list, and a bunch of them match this volunteer tag. They've engaged with me. They should be included in this targeting. If I do not select this checkbox, those people that I just uploaded, anyone who came through any new action, they will not be included, and this will still go out to 0 people. So if you do want this to have the most up-to-date targeting before it goes out, select this checkbox. Some things to keep in mind is that this will cause a slight delay in sending. So instead of sending at 2, it'll take some time to refresh, and it may send a bit later than 2 p.m. You can also just send this out right away. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And after I send, I'm taken to an email manage page where I can see key stats on things like opens, clicks, and action rates, as well as unsubscribes and bounces and spam complaints. Now, I know someone in the chat earlier asked about spam complaints, so I'm going to talk in more depth about them here. And this applies to both spam complaints and bounces. Email providers punish senders who are constantly sending to emails that bounce and to emails that report spam. For those reasons, we add people who report spam and bounce to the global block list. This means that not only you are blocked, but everyone on the platform is blocked from sending emails to this person. We do this for deliverability. Again, mailbox providers really don't like when you're constantly sending to people who have not engaged with you. And for bouncing emails, every now and then a legitimate email is going to bounce. Reach out to us and we'll remove it from the block list. For spam complainers, we do ask that people sign a pledge, pledging not to report our email to spam again, and we'll remove them from the block list after that's happened. Now, previous complaints, what this means, you may see this previous bounce and previous complaint. This means that someone bounced or reported spam on another list on Action Network, and that means you cannot email them. Just a regular bounce and regular spam complaint means someone actually reported your specific email as spam, or they bounced on your specific list. Now, going to the test results tab, you'll see that we have, let me just reload this here. You'll see that we have my 2 different subject lines, and I can compare stats between the 2. Now, I have an automated A/B test running, but let's say I didn't automate this. I can still choose a version to win and send it to everyone else on my list. Now, in the clicks tab, you'll see all of the links that you shared in your action, as well as the unique and raw number of clicks that each got. Now, these 2 links are both in the button. HTML requires the links to be added a couple times. So these 2 links are the button, and this link was my hyperlink in the URL. And I'll be able to compare the stats between the 2, which one generated more clicks, and I'll be able to know for the future, should I use a button or should I use a hyperlink? And then finally, through the rest of these tabs here, you can see stats on, or you can view the email that went out, view how it was targeted, and some additional next steps if you need that. Now, there are some things to keep in mind in terms of monitoring the health of the program that I wanted to highlight. And this is the last thing we'll be covering for today. If you go to the emails tab, you'll notice that there's this weekly stats section. This shows you how your email has performed over the last 7 days. But if you click on a stat, you'll be able to see those numbers over time. And I'm actually just going to change to a group where we can see these stats a bit better. Here are. So here you can see how you've performed over time, your volume of mail, what are your open rates like, how am I doing with Gmail, am I doing good with Yahoo, things like that. You can also compare between different types of stats. So click rates, unsubscribes, all that good stuff. It's a really great way for you to stay on top of the health of your program. And one more thing I wanted to discuss uh, is, and still related to deliverability, are deliverability issue notifications. So this allows you to stay on top of your group more actively. So you can sign up to receive notifications if your email program falls under a certain threshold. And you can set the threshold yourself, but we do have some recommended and suggested thresholds here. And so you can proactively receive updates if your program begins to go downhill or if you begin encountering any issues. So all of this brings me to the end of today's training. I hope that folks found that useful. I'll be on for a couple more minutes to answer any lingering questions that folks have, but otherwise, folks are free to hop off the call. I hope that you have a really great rest of your day. John, to your question about copy and pasting, generally I find that copy and pasting text isn't too bad. However, images, again, you should absolutely not do. Links, you'll have to test yourself. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You're just going to have to play around with that to see. But generally, text and links don't tend to have as much issues as copying images. You're welcome. Did folks have any other questions? And is it possible to pull all of your data and do bulk updates and re-upload? You can do that. You would probably want to carefully do an overwrite upload. I can't walk that through with you today, but reach out to support@actionnetwork.org and we'll be able to walk you through what that looks like. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll be ending this call now. Again, reach out to support@actionnetwork.org if you think of any other questions that you forgot to ask here. Hope that folks have a really great rest of your day. See ya.